Another frosty night. We could see lows of -12 Celsius over any snowy ground. It'll stay dry in Northern Ireland this evening, but mist and fog patches will spread quickly after dark. Now, most parts of the UK will stay very cold again tonight with a widespread frost, but milder air will start to arrive in the southwest towards dawn. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's me again, Neil Oliver Live, on GB News TV and on radio. In a few minutes, I'll discuss the comments from a Tory MP who wants the government to suspend the use of COVID vaccines. We'll discuss whether we should take a totally different approach to fighting world hunger, poverty and climate change. I'll be joined by one of the country's most famous weathermen to find out if we're going to get a white Christmas. And with the big day just over a week away, I'll be joined in the studio by Santa Claus, but only if you're good boys and girls, of course. All of that and more coming up, but first an update on the latest news from Bethany Elsey.
Neil, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories at 6 o'clock. A woman who was injured at a crowd crush at the O2 Academy in Brixton has now died. The Met Police has named her as 33-year-old Rebecca Ikumalo of Newham. The Nigerian artist Asake, who was performing that night, said he's devastated and overwhelmed with grief. Two other women, aged 21 and 23, remain in a critical condition. NHS bosses are urging hospitals to free up beds ahead of planned industrial action by ambulance crews in England. They say it's vital the government and unions talk urgently to resolve the pay dispute before the first day of action on the 21st of December. It comes after NHS data shows 1 in 6 patients are now waiting more than an hour to be transferred from ambulance staff to A&E teams. Well, former Cabinet Minister Dr Liam Fox, who worked as a GP, told GB News they need to overhaul how long patients remain in critical care.
And one of our problems is that we have so many people occupying acute beds in acute hospitals, which are very expensive, very intensive for staff, and they really don't need to be there. We need, in my view, to go back to our concept of convalescent hospitals. And I think that we need to ensure that people are getting the appropriate care, because if you've got people occupying those acute beds who don't need to be there, it doesn't matter how much money you pour into the system, you're not going to get the output that's appropriate for that.
The Nurses' Union is warning that the Health Secretary's macho negotiating style is hindering efforts to resolve their pay dispute. RCN General Secretary Pat Cullen says Steve Barclay undervalues the work of nurses because it's a 90% female profession. She's urging the Prime Minister to step in ahead of further action planned on Tuesday. The union has been asking for a 19% pay rise, but says they would consider any new offer. Well, former Medical Director and Chief Medical Officer at Bupa, Dr Andrew Vallance-Owen, said nurses should be paid fairly.
I think the government has a moral duty to look after its nurses who have done so much work for us over the last 3 years through COVID. The review body award that they were awarded by this so-called independent review body, what was it, 4% or something, was morally wrong as well. They took more notice of the government evidence than they did of the nurses' evidence, and they should come back to the table when we've seen this level of inflation and bring them back to the table.
Travellers are facing more delays on the railway as members of the RMT union continue a 4th day of strikes this week. Trains are starting later than usual and finishing earlier, with some parts of the country having no service at all. Bus drivers in London are also continuing their 48-hour strike, adding to the travel disruption. Former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall told GB News there's currently no end in sight.
As we've seen all too regularly, whenever there are negotiations, especially with the rail unions, it never comes out in a good way. Whatever is offered by the government is sneered at as derisory and isn't going to hit the mark. So you do wonder, what is the number that Mick Lynch has in mind? What would he accept and what the country can afford? But it's quite clear that something needs to happen because the country is pretty much now ground to a halt.
And thousands of homes are without water in North London after a mains pipe burst. London Fire Brigade was called to properties in Camden last night after water, reaching half a metre high, flooded more than 100 homes. Thames Water says some homes remain without running water as they continue to assess the damage. The Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings and is expecting ice for much of Scotland, Wales and north and southwest England. It comes as blizzards are set to sweep across the north of the country this weekend. Temperatures could temporarily rise on Sunday. However, frost is expected to create difficult road conditions. And Croatia have finished 3rd in the World Cup after a narrow 2-1 victory over Morocco. Mislav Orsic's late first-half strike was enough to settle the contest after 2 early goals inside the first 9 minutes of the match. France will play against Argentina in the final tomorrow. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now, let's get back to Neil.
Thanks, Bethany. There was a moment worth remembering last week, one for the big book of history. It was a matter of a few minutes' duration in the House of Commons when Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire, Andrew Bridgen, spoke about harms caused by the products marketed as COVID vaccines and called for their complete suspension because of, and I quote, clear and robust data of significant harms and little ongoing benefit. He referred to peer-reviewed research by cardiologist Dr. Asim Malhotra, who has described the rollout of the BioNTech Pfizer product as, quote, perhaps the greatest miscarriage of medical science attack on democracy, damage to population health and erosion of trust in medicine that we will witness in our lifetime. Strong stuff indeed. As I say, it was quite a moment. He said a great deal about 500,000 yellow card reports of adverse effects, about a journalist from a major news outlet who told him about being bombarded with calls from people hurt by the jabs, how that journalist thought it the biggest scandal in medical history in this country, but feared that if he were to say as much in his newsroom, he would lose his job. He spoke about how reanalysis of Pfizer's own data, published in peer-reviewed journal Vaccine, showed one serious adverse effect for every 800 jabs given, about how other medical products have been completely withdrawn after far lower incidence of harm. He mentioned the withdrawal of the swine flu jab in 1976 after Guillain-Barré syndrome was caused by it in just 1 in every 100,000, and the rotavirus jab taken off the market after causing a form of bowel obstruction in 1 in every 10,000 children. He said the benefits of the vaccine were close to non-existent. He talked about members of the JCVI having huge financial links to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, running into billions of pounds. He quoted the former editor of the BMJ, Richard Smith, who said in 2016 that medical research misconduct was rife. Quote, "Something is rotten in British medicine and has been for a long time," he said. He quoted Richard Houghton, editor-in-chief of The Lancet, who said in 2015, quote, "Science has taken a turn towards darkness." Bridgen concluded, "We have already sacrificed far too many of our citizens on the altar of ignorance and unfettered corporate greed." Mr. Bridgen's statement was memorable. What made it feel like history in the making, though, lay in the response by Maria Caulfield, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department of Health and Social Care. She didn't speak for as long, but her words were every bit as unequivocal. "There is no doubt in my mind that the thing that made the biggest difference in combating COVID was the introduction of the vaccine," she said. "It's important to put on the record that all the vaccines used in the UK are safe," she said. "I completely debunk the conspiracy theories about a whole group of people benefiting financially from the rollout of the vaccine," she said. It seems reasonable to me to say that it's not possible that the two entirely different realities described last week in the House of Commons by Bridgen and Caulfield respectively can both exist at the same time in an honest and rational universe. What was exposed in that chamber was not a difference of opinion, but two mutually exclusive worldviews. In short, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. Since they were each in their turn describing decisions and policies relating to the lives and deaths of billions of people, the stakes could hardly be higher. I say again, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. It's the same story on the other side of the Atlantic. Last week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced his plan to set up a statewide grand jury to investigate any wrongdoing regarding the rollout of the so-called vaccines. Chief Medical Advisor to the President, Dr. Anthony Fauci, then responded to the DeSantis statement saying, "I don't have a clue what he's asking for. We have a vaccine that unequivocally is highly effective and safe and has saved literally millions of lives." Again, as is the case here in the UK, one of them has got it badly, badly wrong. What I have been wondering for a while, though, and which was neatly illustrated by those exchanges in Parliament and in the US, is whether the stakes are actually so high regarding what was done during the past 2 years that there's an intention to deny the people the truth for many years to come. I wonder, in fact, if what has happened in the name of COVID-19, the vast scale of it all, the necessary consequences in the event of Bridgen's side of the argument being proved correct, drives an attempt to encase the COVID event with an impenetrable denial until every last person involved is dead. What is being alleged about the so-called vaccines is of monumental importance. What Bridgen and Malhotra have claimed ought to be the biggest story in the country, in the world, and yet anyone interested in familiarising themselves with most of what was said has to go looking for it online. Bridgen noted withdrawals of those other medical products when their safety was credibly questioned. That's the world I thought we lived in, where doubt voiced in the face of credible research leads to the pausing of a course of action and a rethink. And yet here we are, with peer-reviewed research demonstrating 1 in every 100 people receiving the Pfizer jab suffers a serious reaction, and medical professionals of unimpeachable credentials urging at least a pause in the rollout, if not a full and final stop. And still, the government-sponsored adverts are everywhere, in the mainstream and online, inviting people of all ages to take even more of the same product. Dr. Malhotra said on this channel last week, in relation to the Pfizer jab, quote, "The original trial data, which was reanalysed, suggested one was more likely to get serious adverse effects from the vaccine than one was to be hospitalised with COVID." What does that mean? It means if that is correct, which it seems to be, it should never have been approved in the first place. Questions have been asked all over the world about blood clotting and any possible connection with the AstraZeneca product. Countries across Europe have stopped using it, and it's no longer being given to people under 30 in the UK. It's worth noting that on Wednesday, Pascal Soriot, Chief Executive Officer of AstraZeneca, was knighted by King Charles for services to life sciences in a ceremony at Windsor Castle. All around the world, there is mounting evidence of deaths and injuries caused by the so-called vaccines. There are more and more excess deaths, people of all ages dying every day, deaths unrelated to COVID. Pause for a moment to consider the following. In the United States, in the second half of 2021, 61,000 Americans between the ages of 25 and 44 died of causes unrelated to COVID. The death toll of the same age group during the decade-long Vietnam War was 58,000. Here in the UK, at the start of the lockdown in 2020, in the week ending 23rd of March, there were 1,379 excess deaths. In the week ending 21st October this year, the figure was 1,822. There are more people dying every week now of causes unrelated to COVID than at the height of the pandemic. Daily we were invited to look on in horror at the COVID death toll. Where is the outrage about these latest deaths? The round-the-clock coverage. Dr. John Campbell, a regular contributor to this channel, said last month in relation to the ONS data regarding those excess deaths, there is something pretty horrible going on. Over 1,800 deaths a week, more than we would expect, and it's been going on for a long time now, and we need an explanation. What we get instead is the relentless continuation of the rollout, the push to get boosted. Fauci in the US and others here in the UK say we're still in a pandemic. If that's true, it's the longest lasting pandemic in modern history, much longer than the Spanish flu pandemic at the end of the First World War. The concern being voiced now by Bridgen and Malhotra has been being shouted from the rooftops by many, many others for years. For as long as we've had the products marketed as vaccines, there have been voices asking questions, and those were silenced, derided, ridiculed, reputations ruined. Back in 1995, US physicist Carl Sagan demanded restless inquiry from all scientists. Science requires an almost complete openness to all ideas, he said. On the other hand, it requires the most rigorous and uncompromising scepticism. And so how did we get to where we are now? When did we set aside uncompromising scepticism and decide to live in a world in which we must, all of us, do precisely what we're told by our governments and their preferred experts without ever raising so much as a questioning voice? The chamber in which Bridgen made his speech was all but empty because, with a few exceptions, apparently none of the rest cared to listen to what he had to say about a course of action affecting tens of millions of lives here in the UK and billions around the world. Let's give the devil his due. Let's imagine many are daily in receipt of messages raising the alarm, but find their survival in the world of politics means they keep stoom rather than rock the boat. I hear from other journalists saying they're in contact with MPs, with medical professionals, with high-profile media types, all of whom have decided now to stay well clear of the so-called vaccines. Some of those people have taken some jabs, some none. But the fear of speaking out, the culture of silence in the face of what so many know to be an egregious wrong, is enabling the narrative to persist largely unchallenged. The behaviour of governments and corporations in the last 2 or 3 years has changed the world. It might still look the same, more or less, but in all the ways that matter, it has been altered. Those who are awake to it all perceive a new reality and wonder how on earth they missed the signs for as long as they did. That all but empty House of Commons said loud and clear that the powers that be, the allied powers of governments and corporations, no longer feel the need to be answerable in any meaningful way to the people. Paradoxically, their absence from the chamber only made them more glaringly visible. The willful blindness about the vaccines is just the tip of the iceberg. Soaring excess deaths in all age groups, the complicated truth of the war in Ukraine still not openly discussed, the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world, the wholesale erosion of our rights, the nudge away from cash and towards central bank digital currencies. People are freezing in their homes and turning to food banks in what has been a first world country. Here's the thing, the near emptiness of that chamber was a moment of history, a warning about the future. If our MPs don't care enough about harms to populations around the world to turn up and listen to one of their own, then it's time we reminded the whole damned lot of them that we are still here. They might have their hands over their eyes, but we can see them. They keep their mouths shut, but the silence is deafening. All of that is my opinion, of course, and you're free to disagree. Keep your tweets and emails coming all through the show. You can email gbviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me as well at gbnews, and I'll try to get to some of your comments later in the show. After the break, I'll speak to the author who says the global approach to climate change, poverty and disease is wrong. See you in 2 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. I'm joined in the studio for the duration of the rest of the show by Lord Taylor of Warwick and also by Greg Swenson, the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Welcome to you both. Greg, coming to you first.
Yeah.
My monologue there was about the vaccines, obviously. What do you make of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announcing his plans to impanel a grand jury?
Yeah, good for him. And thank goodness that there's someone out there that is going to ask these questions. It doesn't mean that Ron DeSantis is anti-vax. He was very much anti-vax mandate, but he just won't tolerate Big Brother or big corporates or big government telling his citizens what to do. And so, good for him that he's investigating this. It doesn't sound like he's taken a firm view, but he knows that there has to be, these questions need to be asked. And, I think the losers here will be Fauci and the rest of them that not only did they mislead people, but they withheld critical information. And that's pretty obvious now. There's no argument about that, that he did withhold. And they decided that they were so powerful that they could decide what people should hear or not hear. And that's really troublesome.
Lord Taylor, in the House of Commons, an almost empty chamber when Andrew Bridgen was up speaking about and drawing attention to the many people hurt or dead as a result of the vaccines. no one there. What does that say about the state of Parliament?
Well, in life, if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. And looking back now, we can see that that plan, the pandemic plan, was imperfect. It was an overreaction. We have to have a proper inquiry. Let's see what comes out of this. I'm really concerned about the leadership during that time. It was a panic, it was overreaction.
And what about specifically the burgeoning evidence now of people hurt, people who have died as a result of taking vaccines, which in many cases, for many people in their circumstances, were all but mandatory?
Well, do you know, more people died from abortion than COVID. COVID, by definition, is a virus. It doesn't want to kill you. It wants to live inside you. So many of the deaths that were put down to COVID had nothing to do with COVID. It was heart problems, dementia, strokes.
But what about the vaccines, though? I mean, surely we are long overdue looking seriously and properly and attentively at what was done to people.
There is a public inquiry, and I hope it gets to the truth. And I hope that Matt Hancock turns up and tells the truth.
Greg, while I've got you, I cannot resist but bring up with you the fact that on Fox News, Tucker Carlson raised again the allegation that the CIA assassinated John F. Kennedy. How do you react to hearing that is back in circulation?
If he'd said that 5 or 10 years ago, I think, most of us would just shake our heads and say, oh, it's just another so-called conspiracy theory. But look at what's happened in the last 3 years. And, we're talking about the withholding of information. I actually got the vaccine. I regret it because I clearly didn't need it, but was told that this would prevent me from spreading the virus. I was going to see my parents-in-law at the time, and I felt like maybe I should get it, just to protect them, as it turns out.
As millions did.
That would have been good information for me to have. And so my children were forced to get it, or they couldn't go to work or return to university. It's pretty outrageous what the government has done. So back to Tucker, bring this up, it would have been really outrageous a while back. But if you just look at, what John Brennan, the former CIA chief, talking about Fauci as a national hero, when here's the guy who lied to the American people and misled, perhaps not only the people, but misled people in the government who were making these kind of decisions. So good for Ron DeSantis for...
But it shouldn't be for an individual governor to do this. It should be on a national basis.
Yeah, no, it very well should be. So good for Tucker Carlson. I mean, it's still pretty outrageous.
It takes some cojones to put that out on live television in the way that he did. And yet, as you say, we live in a different world now in which surely we have to be more sceptical, to quote Carl Sagan, about all aspects of government.
Yeah.
And if we know they hide certain things, then might we not assume that there's much more besides that we don't know?
And that there's so much less trust in government and the institutions, especially unelected bureaucrats, like people in the FBI and the CIA. And the FBI is guilty as charged for censoring information in the 2020 election in the U.S. The CIA has got some real credibility issues.
But also, why has the JFK story come out now?
Well,
Biden seems to be perhaps hiding something to do with his son.
The documents are circulating again. Have to move on, though. Fascinating topic. We are, as a global population, failing successfully to tackle the most important challenges facing the world. That's the view of my next guest this evening, who says our global approach to climate change, poverty and disease, endemic war, and the other threats to life and well-being, it's all back to front, he says. If our efforts were better focused, says Bjorn Lomborg, author and president of the think tank Copenhagen Consensus Centre, we would do much better. Bjorn, I think, joins me now.
Hey, Neil.
Thank you for joining us. Bjorn, why are we failing to achieve our goals, these important goals around poverty, disease, war, education?
Well, for one reason at least, because we've just set way too many goals. So the world decided it was going to go with what's called the Sustainable Development Goals back in 2016 and up to 2030. So we basically promised 169 things, and not just small things. We promised to eradicate poverty, eradicate disease, eradicate global warming, eradicate war, get rid of bad education, and all other things, and a lot of smaller things as well. We should have more recycling, and we should have, parks in urban cities. These are all great things. I mean, we'd love to have them all, but we can't. We can't have all of it, and if we can't, I'm simply trying to say, let's focus where we can spend a pound and do the most good first.
I think you've said that aiming at 169 targets is no better than aiming at none.
Exactly.
Which resonates with me. So how do we persuade these, I would say, vain and often narcissistic leaders who are vying with one another in a constant virtue signal popularity contest? How do we persuade them to focus on what can actually be achieved?
Well, at the end of the day, politicians do what we applaud them to do. So if we stop applauding them every time they make these grandiose but almost impossible arguments like, we're going to stop war everywhere, or we're going to end poverty, or we're going to end climate change. Look, all you can do realistically is make some effort to cut poverty or make better education or cut CO2 emissions to deal with climate change. And the truth is, some of these efforts will be very costly and do fairly little, like, for instance, what we do in climate, where we can spend hundreds of billions and even trillions and have virtually no impact even in 100 years. Whereas on others, for instance, on education and on nutrition, we can make very targeted policies that have fairly low cost and could have huge impacts. I'm simply saying, why don't we do the huge stuff first, the stuff that really works, that's very cheap first? So we should applaud our politicians for making the effective policies first.
What would be an example of something that's affordable, that would make a real-time, real-world difference for the starving millions, and that would thereby ripple out to the wider population?
Well, so if you look, for instance, on education, there's about 1 billion kids in school right now. 650 million of them are in the developing world, so basically the lower 4 billion in terms of poverty, so in the low and lower middle income countries. Unfortunately, about 80% of them go to schools that are so bad that they learn virtually nothing. Now, that is one of the requirements of making sure that they can get on the ladder and they can actually start developing so that they can tackle all the other problems. And of course, eventually also get so rich that they'll start worrying about the environment and climate and everything else. So we need to get better education. There is a very proven technology which is really focusing on the fact that right now, and this is true in all classes all around the world, but especially in the developing world, kids are vastly different. So all the 12-year-olds are in the same grade, but they have vastly different prospects. Some of them are really bored. Lots of them have no idea what's going on. If you put these kids in front of a tablet 1 hour a day, that tablet can adjust its learning to exactly your level. And it's so cheap. It'll cost about £21 per year because these tablets can be shared among many, many kids. And what it'll do is basically make sure that these kids will not just learn 1 year every year they go to school, but 3 years. This, for every pound spent, will deliver 54 pounds of social good. That's an incredible investment, probably about 500 times better than much of the money that we spend, for instance, on climate policy.
Greg, listening to Bjorn, it seems so sensible. Why on earth would our leaders have signed up to something with 169 targets on it that they have to hit between now and 2030?
I mean, it's a massive amount of virtue signaling, first of all. And I love Bjorn's research and the pieces that the Wall Street Journal had a series of pieces that he wrote around COP26 last year. And it proves the point that, there needs to be, as both of you pointed out, there needs to be focus. There absolutely needs to be focus. And these things are fixable. 600 million people in Africa still don't have reliable electricity. And we're worried about, spending trillions on the climate panic. And it doesn't make Bjorn or anyone else a climate denier. They're climate thinkers. But, that kind of spending it hurts the poor mostly. And there are so many things that we can do with that money that would, whether it's nutrition or education, only less than 20% of the people in Malawi have internet access right now. That's fixable. That's fixable with less than $100 million in infrastructure. So, there's so many things that we can do, and I think that's a great point to focus rather than waste.
Lord Taylor, that idea that, so cheaply, so affordably, you could alter the educational prospects of millions of human beings, and that they would then, by being better educated, would benefit everyone around them.
Well, governments try to do too many things badly. They need to focus. Hunger and education should be the focus, the priority. But it's the fear of failure. They fear losing office. That's why they have all these goals and they miss most of them.
Bjorn, obviously you're getting round agreement here. I've read your approach to the nourishment of children, which sounds like the most fundamental objective that we as a species could have. And again, you say that a targeted, focused approach is within our reach.
Yes. So again, remember what we do. We work with lots of economists, several Nobel laureates in economics, to try to find the very best investments. And so if you just try to give food to everyone, that actually turns out to be pretty expensive and hard to do because you actually have to have a huge distribution network. It's still a pretty good idea. But what is a really good idea is to make sure that you get better nutrition to pregnant women. Remember, pregnant women carry the next generation within them, and they already now get pills with folic acid and vitamin A, zinc, but we could do so much more if we replace that pill every day with a better pill that has about 15 different vitamins and minerals. It'll cost just a fraction more, about 140, sorry, I don't know in pounds, $140 million, not billion, $140 million every year. And you could basically help 50 million pregnant women. This would help about 3 million of their kids. And again, not only would they be better fed when they're born, but their brains will develop more. So when they go to school, they will learn more. And then when they come out in real life afterwards in adulthood, they will be more productive and be part of this civilization that'll actually create more wealth, more opportunity. So again, this just £1 will deliver 38 pounds of social good. The point that I'm trying to make is simply we're making this project together with we're funded by the Gates Foundation to basically focus where can you spend money in the most effective manner. And if we can help get more people realize, let's do the smartest things first, that'll be amazing.
It seems so obvious that and what we've lost sight of, our leaders have lost sight of, is that we should be taking care of the people who are alive on the planet now, rather than so many of their objectives are these fanciful vanity projects where they're imagining a utopia for people not yet born. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, why aren't there efforts on the here and now and the people who are struggling to hold on to life as we speak?
It's a good question. And again, I think you need better analysis. We have this ability to paint pictures of wonderful worlds, of all the great things that we want. But what we try to do, a little boring but incredibly important, is to have the economists say, well, I'm sorry, how much is this going to cost? How much good is it going to do? And then we should also be thinking about the future. And, for instance, investing in education is not something that's going to help today. It's going to help the future because those kids will only get out and be employed and be part of democracy perhaps 10, 20 years later. But the truth is we need to start asking those very important questions. I'm sorry, how much does it cost? How much good will it do? And that will help discipline politicians not to promise everything to everyone, but to promise the smartest things first.
Is it realistic to think that we can get our politicians to climb down from their vanity projects and just do the hard yards now?
So I'm a realist. I would love for the world to be rational. That's not our game. We're simply trying to say, instead of making the world perfect, we're just trying to make it slightly less wrong. Imagine if we could get politicians to at least pick one or two. We're going to come out with about 12 smartest ideas for the world. And if they'll just pick one or two, that would be amazing.
Bjorn Lomborg, author and thinker, thank you so much for your time and your insight this evening. After the break, I'll discuss this week's decision to increase interest rates and what it means to the millions of people who have a mortgage. Like me. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. It's a scary topic coming up, real-world stuff again. Around 4 million mortgage holders are facing higher repayment rates next year. Last week, the Bank of England raised interest rates from 3 to 3.5%, the 9th increase since December 2021. Half of Britain's homeowners coming to the end of fixed-rate deals will be hit with the kind of hikes that could leave many unable to cope. Joining me now to discuss the situation is estate agent Jeremy Leaf. Thank you for this.
Good to see you, Neil.
Good to see you too. What is? I'm a mortgage holder. What is the reality for people like myself?
Well, it's tough out there if you're going to remortgage this year. That's for sure. But I think it's not as tough as it could have been a few months ago.
And do you think what we're being told, are they being realistic? Is what's happening now, is it short term and will it ameliorate in the months ahead? Or are we just going to see a steady increase in rates like this to the point where more and more people fall off the edge of the spinning wheel?
Well, of course, it's always very difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen, Neil, of course. But the signs are that it's probably, sadly, going to get a little bit worse before it gets better, as my namesake said last week. And I don't think that it's going to be easy for a while. It's certainly not, we're not going to get to the 1% and 2% that we saw a year or so ago. It's more likely for the fixed rate 2 and 5 year rates, which a lot of people are on, more like between 4 and 5% it's going to settle. But what we need to see in the market to get it going again is that stability, which brings confidence.
But it is going to push a lot of people over the edge, isn't it? I mean, most people, because of the cheap money, the free money that was being lent in years past, have taken out as much as they can. But even at that, a lot of people are right on the edge of oblivion. I mean, this is no gentle come down for people, is it?
It's very sad that a lot of people do spend sometimes of what they earn or have very little savings, and obviously those people are more vulnerable. On the other hand, a lot of people did manage to save quite a lot. And of course, the lenders did stress test a lot of the loans they gave out. So in other words, they were working on much higher rates of interest than people were actually paying. So they factored in at least 2 or 3 percentage points beyond which the rate was on offer. So hopefully that will make it a little bit easier than it might have been if it was just an immediate change. But it's not going to be easy for a lot of people, as you say.
Lord Taylor, this is real stuff, literally close to home, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
It's okay to talk about climate change. It's okay to frighten people about war in Ukraine.
Real life,
daily. This is happening to people daily.
And my concern is that this will also affect the buy-to-let home owners who are selling their houses now because it's not worth, renting out, and rents are going to go up, as I understand.
Well, rents are going up. Yeah. They are going up, and this is part of the problem because, of course, for aspiring first-time buyers who may have been looking forward to buy see the rates going up and think, oh my goodness, I can't afford to get to that level. They're renting for longer, not freeing up the spaces for other people who want to rent, which is just pushing up rents even more, making it harder to afford to save for that deposit or even become a homeowner later on. And the landlords have been clobbered, as you're referring to, and maybe a little bit too much because a lot are leaving, and that's pushing rents up even more.
And what frustrates me, Neil, is that I asked a parliamentary question a few months ago about the number of empty houses and flats in Britain, and it's in the thousands.
Correct.
Empty.
Yeah.
Owned by people who don't even live here, and they're empty. It's a disgrace.
We do have a fundamental problem, Greg, don't we, I think, in this country. Housing, full stop, is in a parlous state. There's not enough housing. The housing that is there is not affordable for too many people. It feels like a situation that only ever gets worse.
It's a lot of overpromising by politicians, for sure. I mean, it seems like every year they promise to build X number of homes in the United Kingdom and continue to fail.
It's planning. Planning laws are Victorian.
Right. And this is, look at California. That's why people are moving out of California. It's not just the egregious taxation and overregulation on many other issues, but it's the housing. And you can't build homes there without, going through the hell of planning. And so, it's probably going to be worse, get worse before it gets better. And remember, I hate to bring more bad news, but rates are still below historical average levels, right? So, and with continued hostility to the supply side, to the private sector, to job creators, which you have here in the UK from the so-called conservative government, and you have it in the US, they're not going to liberate the supply side. So all they really have is interest rates and higher interest rates to really to contract the economy. And so I think rates are going higher before they go lower.
Are there any indications that lenders will do anything to help?
Well,
can they do anything to help?
They are. It's a good point, Neil, because what we are seeing is that we're not expecting to see the mass repossessions. Lenders are very much engaging with their customers, and they're extending the periods for loans from maybe 20, 25, 30 years to try and work with their mortgage holders to ensure that they're not displaced, because that will only create what we don't want to see, and that's a big change in the market, a big correction in price and prices generally. So they are working towards it. But as you say, we're not building enough homes. The big problem in the housing market, if you ask for number one, there's not enough affordable housing to rent or to buy. And we just need to make sure that all the policies pass those tests.
But I want to emphasise there are thousands of empty houses and flats in London and around the country. Just empty.
What would you do with those? What's your proposal?
I would increase the taxes of the people that actually own them. They're Chinese, they're Russian, they live abroad, and it's an investment for them. They're happy to see it empty. And that's a disgrace. That has to stop. So the taxation of those people has to go sky high.
What is the state of the housing market beyond what you've already said? What are estate agents and what are the people who make their livings within that marketplace saying about this burgeoning situation?
Well, what's happening is that transactions are going down. They're taking longer because there's more hesitancy. The mini budget, it felt like someone had pulled the plugs out of the computers and the phones. It went really quiet. Existing business stayed on. New business became more challenging. For those in the industry, it's been tough from that point of view as well. But now, new business is slowly coming back as a bit more confidence builds. But until we can see a longer-term return to stability, that's not going to happen.
I just wonder if it doesn't reach a point where people are brought face to face with the reality of the situation they're put in by the system. You know, to buy a house in this country, you effectively buy 5 houses, when it comes to repaying your mortgage. At what point do people say, hold on a minute, the whole thing about the way money is governed in this country, with fractional reserve banking, with the way in which money is lent, the way in which money is created out of thin air, the borrowing, in inverted commas, of money to buy a house is just a part of a much bigger, I would say, rotten situation.
Yeah, but you just have to look back on history, and would you rather pay your mortgage than your landlord's? People would rather do that, and they can see the history of prices and values rising consistently over time. Maybe not so rapidly as in the past, but certainly it's a better bet generally. We are a small country, we don't have many properties, and the government are not particularly keen to build rapidly, or successive governments haven't been. So that means that prices seem to go just one way, and that's why people want to continue buying.
But a situation that you would say, in short, is going to get worse before it gets any better.
I think we need to, sometimes when things do happen badly, as they are in lots of areas and places and types of property, that's sometimes a way for people to say, hey, we can't keep doing the same thing. Again, we have to find another way.
Jeremy Leaf, thank you so much for your contribution this evening.
Always.
Coming on to another break, after which I'll meet this week's Great Britain, a woman with a spinal cord injury who's aiming to swim more than 20 miles for charity. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. My Great Britain this week has set herself the challenge of swimming the equivalent of the English Channel. Impressive enough for most mortals, Jenny Hudson from Lawford in Essex is swimming a distance of 22 miles despite a spinal injury that confines her to a wheelchair. All of the effort will raise funds and help support others who've suffered injuries like her own. And Jenny joins me now, I hope. Good evening, Jenny.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for being with us. Tell me first of all about your own. Thank you. Tell me first of all about your own injury. What happened and when?
So this happened 7 years ago, and I fell off a horse and broke my back in several places and my neck and various bits, and damaged my spine at T5, which is sort of chest level.
And first of all, what was it like? What has it been like adjusting to life since your accident? I can only imagine that an injury like yours affects every area of life.
Unbelievably, more so than you could possibly imagine. You start off thinking you'll be the one that will defy the odds and walk. You'll be the one that will be able to, get out of this chair. And then you slowly realise that you're not. And it's incredibly frustrating. And, there's a lot. Everything takes so much time. Going to the loo takes so much time. All the everyday things take so much time. But, you just got to get on and do it. And there's a lot of people out there with far worse off than I am. I've got great support from my husband. I got married a month before my accident, so that was a bit of a blow for him. But I'm really lucky because I've got great support from friends and my husband. And he took over my mortgage. He supported me all the way. So I'm lucky, and that's why Aspire is so good. And I want to support them because they support people who don't have the sort of infrastructure that I've got, and they'll provide housing and support with subsidies you can get and allowances you can get. So, yeah, there's all that, and your life changes overnight.
Has swimming been part of a sort of broader therapy? Was that part of you coming back to the world after your injury?
No, funny enough, no, swimming I've always been quite fit because I've been riding, so I've always been fit, and because swimming is always such a good, especially a woman of a certain age, you want low impact exercise. So I was determined to keep fit. I did a bit of swimming in rehab, and I tried to find swimming around where I lived, but there was nothing of it. All the pools were too cold, the access was really difficult, the changing rooms were impossible. So my husband, luckily, is a builder, so we sort of did the business plan on the back of a fag packet and thought, actually, we can make this work if we build a facility that we can rent out. I can use it, it'll pay for itself, and we'll get others using it. So we did just that. So that's why I did the swimming challenge, because it's on my doorstep, and it's there, and it's easy for me to do. And
is that
and swimming is so good.
Is that where you're doing your 22-mile as it were, cross-channel swim? Is it in that facility that you and your husband have created?
No, I've done it. We've done it. We've
you've actually completed it?
Yeah. We're in France. We're on our way back now. According to Jo, who I did it with, who helps me run the pool, says she thinks we ought to swim back. So we're on our way back. But no, we did it in the pool. So 120 lengths in the pool is a mile. So that it was a sort of, we had to be concentrate and do it. And it's good. I mean, people in the pool really supportive. There's a lot of children with disabilities who use the pool, but they swim with their siblings and they're on a level playing field. So it's a great atmosphere there, and swimming's a great bringer together and a leveller for many people. And we've got lots of old ladies who swim. They've had hip operations. They don't want to go to a public pool because they're embarrassed. So they walk up and down, and it's a safe environment. They don't, no fear of falling. It's safe and it's easy and dignified.
Now, the charity, I think, it's Aspire Channel Swim. How many people take on the challenge like that which you have now completed?
I think this year there were over 50 across the country doing it. And this is an annual challenge. The first time I came across it was this year, but it's an annual challenge that they do. And I think they raise a lot of money doing it. I first I did a challenge when the marathon, at the beginning of COVID, because the marathon couldn't be run. So a lot of charities were doing, can you do 22 of something? So I did 22 lengths for one charity, 22 lengths for another. I've always been quite a strong swimmer, so swimming's, it's something I can do. So it's a good way of getting awareness of swimming and getting awareness and raising money for charities.
And how much will your virtual Channel Swim have raised for Aspire Channel Swim?
For Aspire, we've raised, I think, £3,500 this way, but now we're on the way back, and I think we've got a few wages for the return journey.
Jenny Hudson, you're definitely a great Briton. I'm always so amazed and impressed and uplifted by people who go through something like that which you have gone through, and yet, apart from thinking about themselves, you've gone on and thought about the bigger picture. So that always brings me personally a great deal of cheer. So thank you, Jenny Hudson, and best of luck with swimming back from France, as it were.
Thank you very much. And yes, thank you for raising awareness for Aspire. It's a great charity.
Always and only a pleasure. Greg, uplifting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's all very well to say I was a strong swimmer, but when something like that happens to you, you break your back, you have to learn to swim again. In the same way that you learn to walk again.
And you know, good for her to turn it into a positive and raise some money for a good cause. So, you know, that's fantastic. Great story. But yeah, swimming, you know, I do it myself for health reasons, and it's not pleasant, you know. And she mentioned, you know, some of the challenges, especially if you're older. But you know, so good for her and her husband for building the infrastructure that's required.
And it just goes to show it's not only what happens to you in life, it's how you respond to it. And Jenny's a great example. And she's so modest about her achievements.
I know, just so matter of fact, as so many of the great Britons that we talk to are. You know, they describe in such simple ways sometimes life-changing events. And then I got that out of the way.
Yeah.
And I was then able to contribute back to society. I find it astonishing.
It's the power of the human spirit. That's why I'm optimistic about the future of this nation, despite governments.
Despite governments, I should get that printed on a T-shirt. It's time for another break, but there's lots on the way between now and 8 o'clock. As the UK continues to be hit by low temperatures, I'll talk about whether we could have the fabled White Christmas this year, and we'll find out about the tragedy that helped lead to the creation of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. And if you're very good, girls and boys, we might be joined in the studio by Santa. How very, very exciting. See you in a few minutes.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. On the way in the next hour, one of the country's favourite weathermen will tell me whether we're in for a white Christmas or not. I'll find out about the children's charity in the Midlands that could soon be homeless. And will Santa be joining us in the studio? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. That's all coming up before 8 o'clock. But now it's time for the latest news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Neil, thank you. Good evening. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. Police have released the first pictures of a woman who died after being injured in a crowd crush at the Brixton O2 Academy. 33-year-old Rebecca Ikumalo from Newham in East London was injured when ticketless fans tried to force their way into the music venue. 2 other women, aged 21 and 23, remain in a critical condition in hospital. The Nigerian artist Ashake, who was performing that night, says he's devastated by the incident and overwhelmed with grief. NHS bosses are warning hospitals must free up beds ahead of planned industrial action by ambulance crews in England. They're urging the government and unions to resolve the pay dispute before the first day of action on Wednesday. NHS data shows 1 in 6 patients are waiting more than an hour to be transferred from ambulance to A&E care. Well, former Cabinet Minister Dr Liam Fox, who worked as a GP, says the system needs an overhaul.
And one of our problems is that we have so many people occupying acute beds in acute hospitals, which are very expensive, very intensive for staff, and they really don't need to be there. We need, in my view, to go back to our concept of convalescent hospitals. And I think that we need to ensure that people are getting the appropriate care, because if you've got people occupying those acute beds who don't need to be there, it doesn't matter how much money you pour into the system, you're not going to get the output that's appropriate for that.
The Nurses' Union is warning the Health Secretary's macho negotiating style is hindering efforts to resolve their pay dispute. The Royal College of Nursing is accusing Steve Barclay of undervaluing nurses because the profession is 90% female. While General Secretary Pat Cullen is urging the Prime Minister to step in ahead of further action planned on Tuesday. The union has been asking for a 19% pay rise, but says they would consider any new offer. Travellers are facing more delays on the railway as members of the RMT Rail Union continue the 4th day of strikes this week. Trains are starting later than usual and finishing earlier, with some parts of the country having no service at all. Bus drivers in London are also continuing their 48-hour strike, adding to the travel disruption. The Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings and is expecting ice for much of Scotland, Wales, North and South West England. It comes as blizzards are set to sweep across the north of the country this weekend. Temperatures could temporarily rise on Sunday, but frost is expected to create difficult road conditions. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now let's get back to Neil.
Welcome back. In our wonderful northern latitudes, we tend to be a bit obsessed with the idea of a white Christmas. Bing Crosby famously dreamt of it, and Christmas cards, advent calendars and one Christmas movie after another persuade us that snow is synonymous with the season. However, since 1960, according to the Met Office's official definition, there has only been a white Christmas 4 times: 1981, 1995, 2009 and 2010. I find that hard to believe myself, even though I looked up those numbers. My next guest should offer a better guess than most. Weatherman and legend, John Ketley. Hello, John Ketley.
Good evening to you, Neil. Thanks for building up my part.
Oh, it's one. Every time I hear your voice, it takes me places. Every time I hear you speak, John, it's great to see you. So, what do you reckon? What are the chances for 2022 adding to the tally of white Christmases?
Well, I suppose I should get my excuses in early, shouldn't I? Really. It's very much up in the air still. You know, we've got to say, after, 3 weeks of tumbling temperatures, and now it's extremely icy everywhere, and there's worse weather to come in the next 24 hours. It really is going to be bad tomorrow. In many parts of the UK, there's going to be freezing rain, glazed ice, heavy snowfall before it eventually turns to rain, and then it gets milder later in the day. So some pretty nasty weather coming up in the next 24 hours. But it's been cold now for quite a long time. And the bookies got wind of this and started dropping the odds to about 2-1, and that's where it stands at the moment. I think even for Glasgow and Edinburgh, 2-1 on a white Christmas. But of course, there's nothing more weird than the British weather. And, you know, as soon as day follows night, then we're going to find that the milder weather comes back in. Everything turns back to rain. There's going to be flooding because of more heavy rain coming in from the south. And the likelihood is now Neil, that it's probably not going to be a white Christmas apart from on the Trossachs, parts of northern Scotland, maybe the tops of Pennines and the Cumbrian Fells. So I think we're in for a green Christmas over most parts of the country. But as I say, I've got my excuses in early. It's still 8 days away.
For the Met Office, what is nowadays the definition of a white Christmas that would enable a person to collect at the bookies?
Well, of course, originally, historically, it was one flake of snow or a bit of sleet even, a bit of snow mixed in with some rain on the Air Ministry roof in London. And that's what qualified as a white Christmas. Quite obtuse, really, quite weird. And of course, that doesn't cover a white Christmas over Scotland, where it could be absolutely deep and crisp and even. But these days, you can actually do have a bet on the different airports around the country, ranging from Aberdeen in the north right the way down to Cardiff and Southampton probably in the south. So it's got to have a little bit of sleet or snow falling within that 24-hour period, midnight to midnight, and the observer's got to be out there watching for it.
What, in fact, are the scientific factors that need to come together to make it happen?
Well, temperatures have certainly got to be below about 1 or 2 degrees C, and that's where they feel to have been for about the past 10 days. It's not surprising we've had snow recently, quite a heavy fall of snow in the southeast of England just a week or so ago. But it has to be very cold, obviously, so we've got to get sleet or snow. But having said that, you can actually see hail forming and developing from temperatures of about 6 degrees if conditions were right, even in parts of the late summer into the autumn or springtime. You can get hail, and that would probably qualify as a white Christmas as well if it actually fell on your particular vantage point. But on the whole, it's really got to be something 1 or 2 degrees above freezing at the very highest, and more likely just below freezing with some snow actually falling on the ground.
Greg, as an observer of Britain as much as I could expect in this time and place, what do you make of our obsession with a white Christmas?
It's a good obsession to have, because a white Christmas is a great. It looks better, it feels better. My wife and I, Mary Ellen, misses snow for sure, and especially around Christmas time. But having lived in Chicago for most of my adult life, I don't miss the cold. So we might be one of the few that moved to London because of the weather. Not in spite of it. So, look, it would be nice, but I'm not optimistic. I've looked at the weather report, just like our guest, and it's not looking good.
Lord Taylor, Texan wife, what does she make? What does she make of this preoccupation we have with the snow?
I think she likes the snow, but it's odd, isn't it? Someone once said that in this country we have 2 seasons, this winter and next winter. In some ways, I'm hoping we don't have a white Christmas, because it'll mean it'll be colder and people are concerned about their heating bills and energy bills. It's nice to look at, but you have to pay for it by putting the heat on.
John, it's a good point, that, isn't it? When you get away from what it looks like, it has real-world consequences for people. Especially now with the lockdown, post-lockdown crisis and the other challenges that people are facing. It's maybe better looked at and experienced a white Christmas. But having said that, climate change obviously is on everybody's lips. Are white Christmases more or less common now in our part of the world than in the past?
On my lips, obviously, Neil, I don't like this phrase climate change. I've always believed that the climate's always changing over certain periods of time. It might be weeks, months, years, or decades. But as far as I'm concerned, what we've got at the moment is a period of global warming, which may or may not be natural anyway. But yes, you'd expect that the chance of a white Christmas, however bizarre it might be, however romantic a notion it might be, is much less likely these days than it was even 20-odd years ago. I think all this kicked in really about 1998 when we suddenly started getting some warmer weather. And we hear these stories about how the 10 warmish years have all occurred in the past decade, or 20 years, should we say. Which is absolutely true as far as we've got the figures for, but they only go back about 150 years, so it's not really a very lengthy period, is it, Neil? I'm sure you agree with that one.
I do, absolutely. I mean, since you raised the subject, put me on the spot, I don't believe there's a climate crisis at all. I accept climate change, and I accept that climate has been changing, since the beginning of us having an atmosphere. I think it's just in the nature of it. And as I've always understood it, we're in an interglacial between ice ages at the moment.
Oh yeah,
you know, when you pull back
absolutely
and look at the bigger picture of
the
the
ice age,
planet.
but it'll be a few thousand years before that happens again. And let's face it, Neil, the 2010 December, which actually was the most severely cold and snowy that we've had in records going back in England till 1659, that wasn't forecast more than about a week or so earlier. Came out the blue. A lot of people would think it was most unlikely ever to happen, and there's probably this 3-week spell that we've got now is a little bit of a bolt from the blue, and many people would think that we're just on a warming curve, which we're certainly not. The 40 degrees that we had during the summer, which was extremely high and hot weather, may not be repeated now for several years. Who knows? We can't predict it. So it isn't a one-trick pony. I've said this before many times on GB News. It isn't a one-trick pony. For every hot spell, we're going to get a cold spell, maybe fewer colder spells than we've seen recently. But you know, the weather is a wonderful thing. I deal with the weather and not the climate. It's too complicated.
Lord Taylor, I think you had something you wanted to add there.
The song White Christmas, sung by Bing Crosby, was written by Irving Berlin in the middle of a heat wave in California.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yes, but I have to say, as the years have gone on, I have become more and more drawn to White Christmas, the movie. But my wife has been watching it 2 or 3 times every Christmas season for all the time I've known her, and gradually, by a process of osmosis, I just seem to have absorbed an affection for that movie. Yeah. And when Bing sings White Christmas, it definitely works for me. But Greg, I was going to say, what do you make of the climate crisis debate? Where do you sit on that broad spectrum?
Yeah, I'm more with your earlier guest, Bjorn. You know, that obviously there's, you know, I'm for conservation, I'm for you know, doing the right thing around pollution, but this climate alarmism is costing a fortune.
It's the word crisis. The media loves the word crisis.
Yeah, and look, you know, if solar energy is cheaper than, you know, whatever they're using now. For example, we're looking at a project in Puerto Rico where they're using diesel. Well, yeah, we'd rather use solar than diesel, but we would not, you know, if solar is more expensive than natural gas. I mean, natural gas, just carbon in general, has liberated the world from poverty and starvation. You know, we need more of it, not less of it. And if
it's plant food,
exactly. I mean, and look at what's happened. You know, in the last few years, because of the climate alarmism, you've seen a massive increase in energy prices. You know, the debacle in Germany, obviously, but here in the UK as well, and real hostility to the energy sector in the US. Who suffers from that? It's poor people. It's poor and working people. Yeah. Whether, you know, petrol is at, you know, higher, 60% higher than it was 2 years ago, which it is in the US, and it's the same here. Is that going to change my life? Not really.
The whole COVID thing and the war in Ukraine has forced us to look to the future, and we'll come through this stronger. I've got no doubt about this.
John, it is interesting, isn't it, that, as you mentioned, the hot days in the summertime, and there was wall-to-wall coverage of it and so much alarmism around it, and, you know, this is a portent of doom and all the rest of it. We're now going through, you know, there's some pretty intense cold happening to people, and by you know, I think 500,000 people die every year of the heat, and 4.5 million people die every year of the cold. It's interesting, isn't it, to say the least, that the headlines aren't really paying attention to the fact that it's very, very cold at the moment.
It's strange how some people go very quiet as soon as we have a cold spell, but they're out there all the time, aren't they, when we get hotter? And that's the end of the world as we knew it, you know. So I'm a little bit sceptical, Neil. Don't worry.
Well, I'm all for. I was quoting Carl Sagan earlier, who I've always kept as a mantra that he insists on scepticism. You know, aggressive, enthusiastic scepticism at all times in relation to science, because that's how we get ahead. By remaining open to new ideas all the time, and sceptical inquiry is the order of the day. John Ketley, weatherman and legend, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
My pleasure.
Great stuff. After the break, I'll find out about the charity that helps children with complex physical and learning disabilities that could soon be left homeless. Come back in 3 minutes, please.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. A Staffordshire charity providing a vital lifeline for 400 children and young adults is about to lose its home. Liberty Jamboree supports youngsters with complex physical and learning disabilities, but the forced closure of its Staffordshire base has left them in urgent need of a new property. Maggie Huckfield is the CEO and she joins me now along with her daughter Lucy. And we'll also hear from Sarah and Rob Page, whose child Shelby is also presently making use of Liberty Jamboree. Hello, Maggie and Lucy.
How are you? You okay?
Yes, I'm very well. Thank you for making time for us this evening. Maggie, just tell me first of all about the work of Liberty Jamboree.
Okay, so Liberty formed itself just over 7 years ago as a response to the closure review services across Staffordshire. And we set up Liberty to support those youth clubs that were open for young people with special educational needs and disabilities. Since then, it has just exploded. We run 4 days a week and 7 nights a week, and we work at weekends, offering over 18 provisions. And throughout the week, we work from the ages of 8 up to 35, offering a variety of different projects, sports, arts, and social outings.
And presumably that explosion of use and need is only indicative of how many people out there are in need of services of the sort that Liberty can offer.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, young people who don't have any sort of barriers through learning or physical barriers are able to go out and socialise independently in a community. And this is the difference from many of our members, is they don't have that opportunity to go out. They don't have that opportunity to go to a local sports club or to go down to a local park independently. And that's why our service is so vital, because it offers the young people a place to go with qualified, experienced staff that will support them. But our aim is then to grow with them, to teach them the skills, to support them so that eventually they may have more independency. But until they get that opportunity to practice, they can't learn those skills. So this is why it's so vital that we have an opportunity like we do at Liberty to be able to sort of support the young people.
Lucy, what does Liberty mean to you? What have you been able to gain and how have you benefited from its existence?
So Lucy's not my daughter, so she's just going to explain who she is. It's okay.
Oh right. Oh, I've been given a slightly bad steer there, Lucy. Sorry, I'm sorry. Lucy, what's been your experience of Liberty Jamboree then?
Well, I started came to this amazing charity when I a member, and then I became a trainee youth worker.
But it's been something that you've benefited from.
Yeah.
Maggie, tell me about the property that the charity's been using and how it's come to pass that you're no longer going to be able to take advantage of it.
Okay, so where we are at the moment is the Staffordshire County Council building. It's an ex-youth club, actually, and where it's based, it's down for redevelopment. So they are building a health centre, and I'm totally in support of that. But I suppose for me, I believe that every young person deserves to have their space too. And I believe that young people with disabilities deserve it even greater because of the risk and the vulnerability that they have within their communities. It's really sad that it's going, and I understand, that the County Council have got to redevelop, but we just need a space to go somewhere else so that we can continue and grow. We offer over 57 hours. We offer over 57 hours of youth work and projects a week to over 350 young people a week. So it's vital that we do continue.
So presumably you very much want to hear from anybody in that general area that has access to and could under some circumstances be able to accommodate Liberty.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Liberty, myself and my colleague Laura Varma were great at sort of getting funding bids in, working with other sort of sponsors. So I'm not afraid to work hard to get the funding to build a new building or to offer a redevelopment opportunity. It's just where we've looked so far with the restrictions of COVID and with the looming sort of recession that's come in, everything we look at, although we're sort of quite healthy for a small charity, it would actually, within 6 months, it would probably take our reserves and our funding away because of the sort of the increase of everything that's just about to happen, really.
Lord Taylor, it's frustrating to hear, isn't it? We're constantly told about how many millions and billions are spent on and sprayed up the wall and sent overseas for, on one project after another. And there's, 400 young people obviously benefiting from, whole families depending upon something that is, has modest needs when you get right down to it, and yet it's facing this kind of existential threat.
Well, what I like, first of all, is the name Liberty Jamboree. It's so positive. But you see, the mistake I think you're making is always looking to government for the solutions. The solutions come from people like these. These are real heroes and heroines. And it is a partnership because government tries to do too much badly, and it needs to have a partnership with the community.
Nowadays, honestly, Lord Taylor, Greg, I don't look to government for anything. I look to the government to look the other way and let me get on with my life.
But what I'm saying is we need to look at the whole structure of our community, our nation. It's a partnership between government and the people. It's not just about government.
No.
Government can't just be, if you like, a sticking plaster.
No, absolutely. Government needs to get out of everybody's way and let people get on with it. But Maggie and Lucy, thank you for being with us so far this evening. And I'm now going to see if Sarah and Rob are there at the moment. Hello, Sarah and Rob. Thank you. This is working seamlessly so far. What does Liberty Jamboree mean to you?
For our daughter, it's a lifeline, really. She has all her social activities there. She has activities that help with life skills, her sporting activities. All her friendships are there, and she's just able to. It gives her the opportunity with people who are similar to her, and she can be herself there.
What are Shelby's needs? What is it that she gets from Liberty that is otherwise unavailable to her and to you as a family?
So Shelby has a learning disability. She doesn't have any label as such. She just has a learning disability. So she's a very social young lady and really likes to socialise and craves independence. But obviously she's very vulnerable as well. So Liberty gives us that security and that safety net that she can go and socialise, be a young person of 18, but in a very safe environment. And that's the same for a lot of our families. It's very safe. It's part of an extended family. And as you can appreciate, as parents, you're very particular who you trust your child with because of that vulnerability aspect. So beyond your very close family, it's quite difficult then to allow your child to be independent, but Shelby craves that independence. And she's grown from the age of 11, actually, when we moved into the area. She's grown with Liberty and she's now 18. So she's just moved into the Liberty Jamboree, where they go on pub nights, they go to festivals, they go for weekends away. And I really can't explain to you what that means to us as a family. And actually, Shelby will openly say, Mum and Dad, I love you, but I love being with my friends. And her friends are Liberty. Her extended social life is Liberty.
And that's the thing, in my introduction I mentioned 400 or more than 400 children and young people, but it's 400 plus families, because the contribution that Liberty is able to make, it's affecting all of your lives.
It is, and actually, to go into an environment to meet families in a likewise situation, you gain support from each other. So whilst our young people have that peer support, we have that family support, and Maggie and her team extend that family support. It's sort of the next steps from 18. Where do they go from college? Where do they go from, when they finish college or the projects they're on? Liberty's day provision is so unique. It works so hard to create those integrated community partnerships that then lead on to voluntary opportunities. They lead on to, employment. Our young guys this year were part of the Commonwealth Opening Games. They're now, auditioning for Britain's Got Talent. These opportunities don't come with a lot of provisions out there, and Liberty are very unique in promoting that normality within that safe environment for our young people.
And what is there a ticking clock on this? I mean, of course there is. How long has Liberty got where it is at the moment before another premises becomes a vital need?
So at the minute, they're asking us to be out by April. We have, as a parents group, we formed a parents group, and we have been asking the local county councillors to, come and talk to us. I think our feeling is they've really dehumanised this situation. They're talking about a building. Actually, this isn't about a building. This is about 400 families who, need this provision every day. They need this respite. Our young people are worthy of more than a building. So actually, the people that we're speaking to, the local people who are responsible for SEND, for education, for health and care, the local councillors are not responding. They're thinking about a building. Actually, we as parents want to know, how are you going to provide for our young people if Liberty goes? Stop talking about a building. We're talking about young people here who deserve more. You know, they're already underserved within our population.
If there's anyone out there who's listening to this and and has part of or the whole answer to what you're looking for, how best to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if they can get in touch with us via Maggie, at Liberty, if there's anybody that, because the other thing that we're facing is we have been on a peppercorn rent and we are very grateful for that. But if we have to move to commercial properties, our finances are great day to day, week to week, but then we're putting in, more financial sort of constraints. So if there's anybody out there who's willing to work with us and donate, please get in touch. We're a wonderful organisation to work with and we give so much back, tenfold. Our young people are superb.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful pitch you've made there. The justgiving.com/Liberty Jamboree. It's there on the strapline on the screen, and I wish you the very best of luck. It seems inconceivable that an organisation making such a positive contribution can be allowed to do anything but go from strength to strength. Rob and Sarah, thank you very much for your time. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Another break is upon us, and after it I'll find out about the tragedy 200 years ago that helped lead to the creation of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. Back in 3 minutes, please.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back once more to Neil Oliver Live. Tomorrow on GB News, we'll bring you an exclusive interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg, the man who was once branded the Member of Parliament for the 18th century, opened up to Gloria De Piero.
What does Jacob Rees-Mogg do to relax? How do you chill out? Do you own a pair of jeans, a pair of joggers?
When I want to relax, I go into the House of Commons and I lie down on the front bench. What else would you do?
You're funny. Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of joggers?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
You can watch the full interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg on Gloria Meets from 6 p.m. tomorrow. And there will also be interviews with the former Conservative Chief Whip Wendy Morton and the former Tory Minister Liam Fox. It is 200 years since HM Racehorse, a British ship of war, sank off the Isle of Man. She was en route from Holyhead to Douglas when she struck a reef of rocks. The rescue attempt that followed, in which 9 lives were lost, is credited as part of the inspiration for the creation of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. Now, a new exhibition will tell the story of that night and of the life-saving institution that emerged from the tragedy. Former Chief Minister for the Isle of Man, Tony Brown, has been closely involved with the effort, and he joins me now. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Neil.
Hi. This is a story that's close to me for lots of reasons, not least because I've always been such a huge admirer of the unique creation that is the RNLI. But tell me first of all what happened. What happened on that night of the 14th of December, 1822?
Well, the HMS Brig of War Racehorse was sailing to Douglas, and it came from the south of the island going past Castletown. And, of course, it was dark. It was in the winter. And, unfortunately, the pilot misread a light, and they ended up running aground off Langness Point, which is just on the peninsula of Castletown. And the ship started to sink. So 3 boats from Castletown with men on board, Castletown men, sailed out in the rough seas to try and save those on board. And about 98 of the crew and Marines on board survived the loss. But unfortunately, on the last run, one of the boats turned over and there was a loss of 9 lives, 3 of whom were Castletown men.
Is this still a well-known story on the Isle?
Well, actually, it isn't. It's one of those stories that's sort of drifted with time over 200 years. There's not really been a lot about it. It came to light because some local divers in the 1960s, early 70s started looking for the wreck, and they found it, and they then raised items from the wreck. They bought the wreck off the Admiralty, and the stuff was all brought ashore, the bits that they got, cannonballs, the guns, etc. And that gave it some publicity, but it's one of those things that's never been very much highlighted. But of course, the incident itself was a tragedy, naturally, but the implications and what followed actually had major implications for the British Isles and, in fact, further afield.
Now, Britain and the British have always had a very strong affection for the RNLI, and in point of fact, it's actually hard to imagine a time when it didn't exist. But, of course, it had to come from somewhere. So in what way did the loss of Racehorse inspire or lead to the creation of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution?
Well, the Isle of Man is an island located in the middle of the Irish Sea between Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales. And what happened was that Sir William Hillary, who you may well know, was a resident in the Isle of Man, and he had been trying to promote some sort of life-saving organisation for mariners. And he built what we call the Tower Refuge, which was a place for people to go when the ships ran aground, which they did. Don't forget, sailboats in those days didn't necessarily control where they were going because of the wind. And when this incident happened, he was aware of it, and he then petitioned the British Parliament for a organisation to be set up called it became the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, but he called for a maritime life-saving organisation. He petitioned the British Parliament saying it needed to be put in place, and he was eventually successful on that. And that then evolved into what we now call the RNLI, who will be celebrating their 200 years in 2024.
Now, what will visitors encounter at the exhibition?
Well, at the exhibition, there are diagrammatic stories of the racehorse. There's a model of the racehorse which has only recently been made. There are a number of artefacts that are there, bits of guns, cannonballs. There's even an elephant's tusk which was found on the wreck, and they don't really know why that was there on the ship. And there's all sorts of items that they used to use, and some of them very similar to what we use today in certain areas of our business. So there's lots of little bits. I mean, we've only got a portion of them at our exhibition because the items, there are many, many items, are held by our museum. But the museum, Manx National Heritage, have actually put together the exhibition for us. And also there's recent...
Oh, I think we've temporarily lost Tony there. Greg, this is a great example, isn't it, of an organisation that came spontaneously from people, not government, recognising a need and persuading the powers that be to.
It's a great story.
Make it happen.
But it's it started with tragedy.
It's not either or.
Yes. But it's not big government. It's as Edmund Burke called it the platoons. Life's little platoons. It's family. It's your civic organizations. It's your local sports teams or whatever. Look at the things in common with RNLI and Liberty. Which we talked about earlier. I mean, these are both fantastic organizations, born locally and developed locally and funded privately or funded with
and also
charitable or
that was painful became powerful.
Sure.
Yes.
It turned the negative into a positive.
I appreciate the need for partnership, Lord Taylor, don't get me wrong, but I think what's really important is the recognition that people on the ground are the ones who actually know what's needed.
Of course, I understand.
And the RNLI came from seagoing people on the coast who lived that life and knew the price that was regularly being charged by the sea for lives lived upon it. And it was that grassroots, on the ground, bottom up kind of organisation that mattered.
What the point I'm trying to make is the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stone. It ended because man developed new ideas and inventions. But you do need the partnership between the people, yes, and government. You need leaders at national level, but it can't be run from number 10 Downing Street.
And there's no doubting either, Greg, that the RNLI, as it has evolved, is another treasure that's envied around the world. I mean, you imagine that other places have an RNLI, but they don't. There are life-saving organisations, but the RNLI is something particularly special and acutely tweaked to the needs of this part of the world.
And it's a perfect organisation for an island nation, of course, but, talk about bravery. I mean, these sailors are really brave. I mean, they lost 9, people just, from the rescue, but I'm sure there's been a lot since.
I have written at length over the years and thought a great deal about the Penlee lifeboat disaster that happened at Christmas time, and it affected the community of Mousehole, and the whole crew were lost.
Yeah.
And the people that they had successfully got onto the boat were all lost. It was a complete tragedy. And the very next day, even before the bodies had been recovered, volunteers stepped forward from the community that had lost all those men to take their place whenever they could organise a replacement lifeboat. And that's the monument to the RNLI.
But solutions often come from desperation, from a need that needs to be met. That's where the solutions come from.
Indeed. We're on top of another break, after which we could have a real treat. I'm making no promises, but I'll do my best. We might be joined in the studio by no lesser figure than Santa Claus. Find out if the big man is going to be here in 3 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back for the last time this evening to Neil Oliver Live. Now, Christmas is approaching fast, given the schedule being contemplated by one of very few delivery operatives not contemplating strike action in the weeks ahead. It made sense to us here at GB News to book a slot with Santa Claus sooner rather than later. Santa, a.k.a. Father Christmas, a.k.a. St Nicholas, joins me now. And I have to say, Santa, you're looking even better than last year.
Well, thank you. I think I'm like a good wine, do you think? I'm mature with age.
Santa, you simply never get old.
Well...
Tell me, though, how's the list looking? I mean, I can't imagine many MPs are making it onto the nice side of the ledger.
Well, when you say not many, that's perhaps a huge exaggeration. Almost nobody. But you did. Of course you did. And so this is your official certificate, which I failed to give you last year, so some of this stuff might be out of date. It's thank you for your work as President of the National Trust for Scotland. Obviously, that's now finished, but you did stalwart work there. And for your service as patron of the Association of Lighthouse Keepers.
Oh,
and
that's lovely,
just a
Santa.
Thank you for your being
That's
nice.
terrific. I've got a signed document from Santa Claus.
That's proof now. If anyone says you're not on the nice list, you can prove you are.
This is an absolute first. What about, how are things at the North Pole? Anyone contemplating strikes up there? Elves, reindeer?
No. There was a bit of kerfuffle with some of the stable elves because it's like work anywhere. Sort of some of the elves think they're a bit special, a bit above it all, you know. So the elves in the wrapping department kind of look down on everyone else, and the stable elves tend to be the bottom of the heap. But if you didn't have them, you know, the reindeer wouldn't be ready to deliver. So they are key.
So
they're a key worker.
There's a hierarchy assumed by the elves.
Yes, it's not really very fair because the wrapping elves are no better than the stable elves. So they just think they are.
Yeah. They're not going to go on strike, are they?
Oh,
because
no.
that would be not welcome.
What about broken supply chains and all the rest of it that we hear so much about? Is any of that having any problems? Are you getting any shortfall in what you need to make everything?
Yeah, I think there have been some issues with electronics. I don't get very involved in that side. You know, give me a bit of wood, make a train, make a car. You know, but electronics, you know, that's over to the technical elves. But I think they had some issues, but I think we're OK for the most part.
We were talking earlier in the show about the possibility, the likelihood thereof of a white Christmas. Now, I'm guessing that you have a better inside track on that kind of meteorological information than most.
Yes, well, when I get back on Christmas Day, I can guarantee I'll have a white Christmas because I'm at the North Pole. But obviously, I see all weather conditions because I'm going around the whole world. So, yes, it'll be a white Christmas for me.
What is the population of the North Pole? You know, when you talk about the elves of various demarcations and the rest, what's your living, working population?
I don't know exactly, but it's in the thousands because we've got a lot of elves doing a lot of work. I think one of the best jobs as an elf is being one of the reindeer herders, which used to be, obviously they used to use Icelandic horses, but now it's mainly snowmobiles. And this is why I think the stable elves are some of the best, because they're the technicians. They can maintain the snowmobiles as well as looking after the reindeer.
Is there a bigger population of reindeer up there than just Dasher and Dancer, Donner and Blitzen being the front guys?
Yes. Yes.
So you have a B team at least?
We have many teams if we wanted, but the thing is with reindeer, they're a herd animal. And if you only had 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or even 9, they kind of get a bit cliquey, if you like, but with a big herd. And
is Rudolph in good shape? I mean, with all these respiratory viruses going around, it must be hard to check him, what with the throbbing red nose and all the rest of it.
The thing with Rudolph is he did have a bit of reindeer flu a while ago. And I don't know if you know reindeer flu, but it's worse than man flu. If you can imagine something worse than man flu. Rudolph had reindeer flu. And when he's got the flu, his nose stopped being red. But it's full red again, so we know he's OK.
Lord Taylor, it's a legendary figure. It's sitting among us. How does it make you feel to be in the presence?
Because I stopped believing in Santa Claus when I was 15. Now I believe again.
I'm sorry to hear that you
really apologise.
We haven't bumped into each other since my children were young.
No.
And that was
a while ago now.
Yeah.
But now your grandchildren are coming along, and we'll be meeting up again, I hope.
Any day now. We'll put it together.
Are there any spare houses on the North Pole, because we have accommodation problems down here? I'm just wondering, you know, maybe
employment opportunities.
No, we're fine up there with the elf schools. We're fine. But what I do find is all these empty flats that are just being used as investment property. They really disappoint me, because that means there isn't a child there for me to take a present to.
True.
But in a way, it perhaps helps, because, of course, every year there's another 1 million+ houses for us to deliver to. And Mother Claus is the main logistician, what do you call it? Logistician. Yeah. And so she has to work, and every year it gets harder and harder to make sure we can do every house in the limited time at our disposal.
What would be your message for children watching this? Because obviously, you know, it's been a difficult year for a lot of mums and dads. It's been a difficult couple of years for families generally. Do you have some comforting, reassuring words for people watching who need Christmas this year perhaps more than ever before?
Yeah, I think I would say things are hard this year. Things are very hard. And we don't have a government that's helping make it any easier. But it will get better. It will get easier. And the children should know that their grown-ups love them.
What do you think people should remember Christmas is really all about? Obviously, every time people see you, they think of the big bag of gifts and all the rest of it. But what really should people be paying attention to? Maybe especially children. What is the meaning of Christmas?
Well, I think, for me, it's kindness, being kind to one another. That's for children and for grown-ups. But for the grown-ups, it's looking at what their children do and being proud of their children, because if you think of your children, you must be proud of them.
All the time.
You know, the way they're coping with their teenage years and that, you know they... And it's really hard, isn't it, being a child? I mean, we all think, oh, children, they've got it easy, they don't have to go to work. But it is really hard being a child.
Yeah, especially the last few years.
Yeah. And so I'd say, you know, be kind to one another. And parents, just recognise how wonderful your children are.
I feel very strongly, Greg, this year, every year, but I think this year there's a real need for Christmas. And that it doesn't need to be about great mountains of presents. It's about fundamentals.
Yeah, and look, remember, a year ago, we were still in lockdown light. I mean, we weren't really out of the, over the hump yet with these ridiculous lockdowns, which were particularly cruel to children. Children, in the U.S., where in some states in the U.S. where they weren't allowed to go to school, and they had to, 3-year-olds wearing masks. It was just obscene. And a year ago at this time, we were still dealing with all of those ridiculous policies, both here and in the U.S., where, where children were the ones who suffered the most. Frankly.
It's about faith, not fear.
What does Christmas mean to you, Lord Taylor?
It's about Jesus Christ and the Christian religion.
Absolutely.
And it is about faith, not fear, because the media, not GB News, is about fear, crisis. We're all doomed.
And when you say it's about Jesus
Christ,
Christ,
we come through, and we're victors, not victims.
When you say it's about Jesus Christ, and it's also about that simple message of the family, the Holy Family. But it's about a mother and a father transformed into a family by the presence of a baby boy. Thank you, Santa. I must shake your hand. Thank you so much. It's an absolute treat to see you. That's all for tonight. Thank you to my panel, Lord Taylor of Warwick, Greg Swenson, and to all my guests, Santa especially. I'll be back at 6 o'clock next Saturday with a special Christmas Eve edition of Neil Oliver Live. Next up, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's 8 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. We kick off with the People's Hour, in which I take your video calls. Tonight we'll be asking, after 100 days as our monarch, is Charles proving to be a good king? Also, do you trust the NHS to look after you this winter? And can Christmas be done on a budget? And would it be any fun? After 9, all of your favourite items, the papers with full panel reaction, my big opinion monologue, my take at 10 and much, much more.